Welcome back, Cat 31 CATIA class. We're going to start going over the U-joint assembly. In this video, I'm only going to focus on the swivel, shown here in yellow. Now, I'm going to deviate slightly from the textbook, but if you want to follow the textbook, go right ahead. Now, the textbook, the way they start the modeling is by first starting the assembly. Think of the assembly as a binder, and then the swivel, and then the U-joints as pages inside of the binder. So let me first hide these components here. Okay, so once again, the textbook has you to first start the assembly. It's like taking a binder, opening up a binder, and then they'll have you insert a sheet where you're going to draw the swivel. And you'll create the swivel, right? So that's one sheet inside of your binder. Then they'll ask you to create the first U-joint. So you insert, you're going to insert a part. It's like inserting a sheet. You create your U-joint. And then from there you create your second U-joint. So you would have to insert another sheet into your binder, and you create the second U-joint. So you're basically opening up your binder, inserting sheets, and then drawing on those sheets. You have one sheet for your swivel, a sheet for your first U-joint, and then a sheet for the second one. Okay, I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to do each part individually outside of the binder. So I'm not going to start an assembly. I'm going to draw the swivel in its own sheet. So it's like taking out a sheet of paper and start drawing on your desk without even including the binder. So that's the approach I'm going to take, and this is referred to as bottom up, which you'll learn more about of this method in CAT 32. The way the book explains it to you, where you start a binder, start inserting sheets, and start modeling each one, that's referred to as top-down design method. You're actually modeling inside of the binder. You have the binder open, and you're modeling inside the binder. The way I'm going to approach it is the bottom-up, where you're going to create each part individually first on a sheet of paper, and then at the end, you'll take out the binder and start inserting the parts to create your assembly. All right, so I'm going to focus on the swivel joint. So I'm going to open up that one on its own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to open it up in its own window. Actually, let me go ahead and open the plus, right click on the part, open in its own window. Okay, so I'm going to walk you step by step how to create this part. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start a new part, and I'm going to come back and reference this existing already swivel. Okay, so I'm going to go to start, part design. I'll just call it swivel. I'll just call it swivel number 2 so I don't get it mixed up with my existing one. And OK. Alright, so I'm going to be referencing and going back to the existing one. Okay, so we have our new swivel, swivel number 2. So we're drawing on the page, and we're completely ignoring the binder as if it doesn't exist. Alright, so let's go back to the reference one. So I'm going to go back to it, and I'm going to open up the tree, and I'm going to go down the history. So I'm going to right click on the first pad, right click, define. So our first step is to create a shaft or create a model of the shaft. I'm going to go to the sketch, And I forgot to mention this is in inches, so don't forget to set your units in inches. If you want to do it in millimeters, I'm okay with it. Okay, so this has a radius of 0.5, so I'm going to create a circle at the origin, and I'm going to create it on the ZX plane. The y-axis is actually normal to the screen. So the plane I'm going to draw on is the ZX plane. And you can see as I hover over the ZX plane, this one turns orange, or by mistake bluish, to let you know it's hovering over it. If I was to select it, then it turns orange. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and exit this existing sketch. Okay, so let's go back to our new part. Alright, so we're going to go to the ZX plane, and we're going to create our sketch. Okay, and once again, we're going to use the radius of 0.5. So let's go back to ours. All right. And we're going to see the history being created in the branch as we create new geometry. So I'm going to go to the circle command. Let me move this over. So I'm going to go to circle command, and right at the origin, right at 0, 0, I'm going to give it a radius. Okay, we're going to use 0.5 as our radius. Alright, and it got really small. That's okay. We can always do the zoom fit. You see the yellow icon? It'll do a zoom fit. Let me move this in closer. Zoom fit again. Okay, there it is. It'll zoom in even further. Alright, so we have our first sketch, 0.5, very simple. Now we can exit. I'm going to click and space to deselect. Now, let's go ahead and create our pad. So I'm going to pre-select the sketch, create our pad, and I actually forgot to check the dimension. It's okay, we'll come back and check the dimension on the first one. Okay, one thing I do want to do is set mirror, so it also thicken in the or extrude in the opposite direction. So I'm going to turn on mirror. I'm going to hit OK, and I'll come back and fix this dimension. Hit OK. Okay, and there we have our first shaft. Pretty straightforward, very easy. Okay, so let me go back. And let's check the size of the pad, and it's 1 inch. So in this case, I went 1 inch in one direction, 1 inch in the other direction. You can always close the extension here or open it up. When I should have just clicked mirror. I could have just clicked mirror instead of having to do the second limit. If I click mirror, it'll just mirror this first dimension and extend it in the opposite direction also at that same dimension. Okay, so let's go back. And all I have to do is double click directly on the shaft or on pad 1 and change this dimension to 1. And I actually just realized we typed in the wrong dimension on the diameter. Hit OK. It's like, hey, how come this looks kind of narrow compared to the previous one, right? And probably some of you saw the mistake I made. This has a radius of 0.5, and I actually typed in diameter of 0.5 in our example. So let me go back and fix that. So I should have done radius 0.5. That's okay, we can go back and fix it. Go to sketch 1. Double click on the diameter, and we're going to change it to radius. I'm going to type in 0.5, and it should double in size. Radius of 0.5, and OK. Yep, there it is. And exit. Okay, that looks way better. Okay, so, and if you were to type in the wrong dimension like I did earlier, I'm not going to take any points off. What's important here is to learn how to create the part and how to use these commands. I'm not going to take any points off if you type in the wrong dimension like I did. All right, so now let's go to the second sketch. So let's go back to our reference model. Okay, so let's take a look at sketch number 2. Okay, so sketch number 2, we're going to draw another sketch at 0.375 radius. Let me click normal. Okay, so we do have our sketch here. I know it's hard to see. I can always slightly turn off the lights in the background. You can do this if you like. This is optional. Okay, so at the origin, we're going to draw another circle at 0.375. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit. So what is that going to do for us? So let me right click, define on pad number 2, and it'll create another shaft inside the larger one. Okay, so we're going to use the exact same sketch, or I should say plane, ZX plane, to sketch on. Okay, so I know it's hard to see, but here's our plane, ZX, and we're going to create a new sketch. Okay, let's go ahead and draw the circle. And we're going to put a radius of 0.375, so make sure this is set to radius. And type in 0.375. And OK. Okay, and you can see the circle is smaller than the first sketch, right? And actually the first sketch is in the background, just in case you forgot. That's the background. It's the first sketch is hidden in the background. Come back to the visible layer, or the show layer. All right, so now let's go ahead and exit. Okay, now we're going to do the pad. And this time we're going to go further out. I forgot to check the dimension. That's okay. We'll come back and fix it. So we're going to go further out on our dimension than the first one. And we're also going to mirror, right? And hit OK. And there's our second shaft inside the first one. Okay, so let's go back. And let's double click on pad number 2. And it's 1.6. Okay, so let's fix pad number 2. Type in 1.6. And OK. All right, so that's pretty straightforward, not that tough. Very simple sketches. Okay, so let's go back to circular pattern. Okay, so we could in the next step create a sketch on the perpendicular plane YZ, right? And done the same thing to duplicate the first 2 shafts at a 90-degree angle, right? Just a different orientation, 90-degree angle with respect to the existing shafts. But here we're going to follow the textbook and do a circular pattern. So we're going to learn something new. Okay, so I'm going to right-click define on this one. And you can see that it actually rotates to create a copy at 90 degrees to the original one, right? So if I double-click, you can see you're going to create a circular pattern. And we're going to use the XY plane, by mistake. We can actually use a plane or even an axis to rotate about. Okay, so I think here the textbook asks us to rotate about the XY plane. But we can also use an axis. If I click in here, so I'm going to left mouse click, make it blue, right click, and I can rotate about an axis. And actually I prefer to rotate about an axis. In our case, we're going to rotate about the Z. So here, see the Z axis is pointing upward. So we're going to rotate about the Z, which actually it's right here. And we'll rotate around. Since we created our shaft, our first shaft, about the origin, we know that X is here. My mistake, Z is vertical. Then X is going in this direction. And then Y is going along this shaft. Okay, so I'm actually going to rotate about the Z axis. Okay, when we create ours, we're going to rotate 90 degrees. Okay, so our angular spacing, 90 degrees. And we're going to do it twice. It's like, hey, but we're only going to create a second one. Why do we need to create two instances? The reason we have to type in 2 because it takes the first one and includes it in the count. Okay, so the first set of shafts we created, that's referred to as the first instance. Even though we're only going to create another instance, just one more on this one, we have to type in 2. So the 2 includes the original 2 shafts. Alright, so we're going to do the circular command. Let me cancel here. Okay, so let's go to Swivel. Now, one thing I am going to do just for practice, if you don't have to do this step if you don't want to, I'm going to insert an axis. And you'll see it load in the tree. And typically the position it'll load into is the origin. Okay, that's the default position. You can always place an axis in another place. You have the option to include multiple axes. And all you have to do is locate them. And the default position is at the origin. So when I create my axis, right away it goes to the origin. I can place it somewhere else if I like. I can just type in coordinates with respect to the origin if I want to move it elsewhere. So I'll just go with the default and hit OK. And this is to show you that Z. So here is Z, right? Going vertically. Just like the Z we see here in our compass, or also referred to as the robot. Alright, so let's go ahead and do a circular. So I need to dig out our toolbars and look for that circular. And here it is. Okay, so we have our pattern, and we're going to go with circular. Go to the drop down, pick circular. If for some reason you don't see this command, you can always go to insert. And it should be under transformations. Let's see. I'll just go down the list here, and there it is. Transformations, and you can go to circular pattern. Alright, so it defaults to 2 instances. I'm going to leave it at 45 degrees and then I'll come back and change it to 90. Okay, so we need to rotate about an axis. You can also do it about a plane, but it just makes more sense, right? It's like, why around a plane? It's supposed to be around a line, but that's okay. It's just another option to be able to rotate. You can rotate about a plane. So I'm going to left mouse click inside here and then right click and pick the Z axis. You can also pick it directly from our axis here. Okay, so either first left mouse click, it turns blue, and then right click on your mouse to get a list of options to rotate about. Okay, so I can pick Z directly from here, right? Oh, actually, yep, it is Z. Thought I made a mistake, but there it is. It was at the awkward angle of 45 that threw me off. But you can also, once again, click in here for our rotation axis. We can pick directly from our model. So we can pick Z from here. That's another way. All right. So the reason I wanted to leave it at 45 degrees, because I just want to show you that, hey, I'm going to increase my instances. The default is 2. I can say, hey, I want to create 3. Hey, maybe I want to create 4. 4, there it is. We can say preview. Now, even though we just created 3, we need to include the original one in the count, and that's why we have a count of 4. It's the original one plus the 3 we just created. Okay, so you have to include the original one in the count. All right, so for ours, we're going to only do a count of 2. So let's go drop down to 2. Hit preview. And again, it includes the original one. That's why we have 2. And the angle I'm going to type in 90 degrees and preview, and there it is, and OK. Notice this is our axis of rotation. We can actually hide this. Let's see if we can hide this. Yes, we can hide it. So when we rotate it, picking the z-axis, it actually borrowed that geometry and it created a separate line, separate from the axis. But we can always just hide it. All right, so next step. Okay, we're pretty much almost done with this. Okay, next step is to create our fillets. Okay, so if I double click, actually let me right click, define this one. And now you can see the fillets, right? So if I double click, it tells me to create a fillet of 0.04 on these 4 edges. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so let's create a fillet. Fillet, and we're going to select the 4 edges on the inner shafts, the large ones. And by the way, I'm not holding on to the control key, I'm just simply clicking on them. Now if you click the wrong edge by mistake, let's say we clicked on this one by mistake, you can always just select it again to deselect. As you can see, it's gone, there it is. And it's keeping a count. It tells us we've selected 4 edges. Okay, and we're going to type in 0.4. Is it 0.4 or 0.04? Let me hit preview. 0.4 sounds a little too large. Yep, it's too large, so saying, hey, error, do you want to, no. So as you can see, my fillets are way too large. Let me close this. Yeah, so it sent me a warning. Hey, these fillets are maybe larger than what you need. Okay, so let me double click. No, I'm just going to say no, leave it alone. So let me highlight, and it's 0.04. My mistake. Preview. Yep, that's better. And OK. All right, so let's move on. What's next? Okay, so next, let's right click on this one, define. Now we have these inside fillets. Okay, let's double click on that one. That has a radius of 0.06 inches. Okay, so we're going to select these inner edges. Okay. Okay, so let's create those fillets. Okay, so let's go to the fillet command. And we got to pick 4 of them. Make sure it's the edges and not the surface. And we can tell that we selected the edges because they're red. All right, so we have 4 of them. And we're going to type in 0.06. And OK. Click in space. And we have it. All right, let's go ahead and look at the last feature, which is chamfer. So let me right click, define on this one. And we have a chamfer of 0.06 at an angle of 45 degrees. And we're going to select all 4 outer edges on the shafts. All right, so let's go ahead and add the chamfer. So it should be below the fillet. Chamfer. If you can't find it, you can always go to insert. And you can go down the list here. I forget exactly where it's at. And here's chamfer. Dress up features. Chamfer. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the edges. At the end of the 4 shafts. Okay, so we're going to type in a length of 0.06. So from the edge, it's going to go in From the edge, it's going to go in 0.06 and then cut it at a 45-degree angle. Let's preview. There it is. So from the edge, it goes 0.06 and then cuts at a 45-degree angle. And we're going to hit OK, and there's our chamfer. All right, so if you want to go ahead and give it color, you can always right-click Properties and give this some color, right? Leave that up to you. Okay, so we're done with the swivel. I'm going to go ahead and save it. File, Save As, and I'll just save it on the desktop, and I'll create a new folder. If you want to put it in your Chapter 7 folder, if you like. I'm going to create a new folder, call it the U-joint. And if you want to just name your swivel, I'm going to call it swivel number 2 because I already have a swivel 1, or the original one. Okay, and I'm going to save it. Alright, so that's the end of this video. I'm going to create a separate video for the U-joint, and we're actually going to cheat on the second U-joint. We're just going to save a copy of the first one, and so we don't have to create a second U-joint from scratch. We can just use a copy of the original one, but that'll be in a separate video. Alright, see you in the next one.